Do you know that too much adrenaline can be bad for your body, can cause incredible harm to you? The same goes with conflict, because conflict causes too much stress and adrenaline. And today we're going to talk about the dangers of unresolved conflict through 2 Samuel 13 and 14, King David and his sons, specifically Absalom and Amnon. Good morning, I'm Pastor Rini. Welcome to 747 Morning Inspiration. So glad you joined us today. And we're going to talk about this unresolved conflict today in 2 Samuel because David's kingdom begins to unravel now after his adultery with Bathsheba, as Nathan the prophet proclaimed. And let me just tell you about the story that happens and unfolds in 2 Samuel 13 and 14. David had his firstborn son, whose name was Amnon, and Amnon, quote unquote, loved his sister, his half-sister, Tamar. She was his half-sister. He was infatuated with her and wanted her. So he was making himself sick with his infatuation. So there was a gentleman named Jonadab who was a crafty person. And so Amnon calls upon Jonadab to help him meet his sister Tamar. And so he tells him, okay, pretend you're sick, and then tell the king you're sick. So David comes, sees his sick son, says, how can I help you, son? He says, Dad, I need Tamar to come feed me with her hand and minister to me and nurse me to health. And he said, sure, not knowing the infatuation his son Amnon would have his half-sister, which, by the way, is Absalom's sister. So King David sends her in to take care of him. He tells her to lie with him. She says she would not. And so he rapes her. He violates her. And the problem with that, obviously, is it's a horrible sin in Israel to violate one's sister. And even though she was his sister, she was his half-sister. And she tries to stop him by saying, she says to him, now therefore, please speak to the king, for he will not withhold me from you. But he would not listen to her, and being stronger than he violated her and lay with her. And once he raped her, he hated her. And he kicked her out, and he locked his bedchambers. And not only did he destroy her reputation, he locked her out of serving with him. Now, she immediately takes her robe that she wore as a daughter of the king, which is long, with long sleeves and a long dress, which shows that she's still a virgin, and she rips it to show that she's been violated. And she puts ashes on her head. So she is not ashamed of telling the world, this man did this to me, my half-brother. She tries to get justice. But her brother Absalom says, be quiet, say nothing. And so he doesn't allow her to go public with it, but the king knows, and all it says was King David was angry. That's all it says. He was angry with his firstborn son, but he did nothing to resolve the conflict. So what we see is the conflict of Amnon was not dealt with, so he raped his sister. The conflict of Tamar was not resolved, so Absalom made her be quiet. King David did not resolve the conflict by dealing with his son Amnon. And all of this conflict began to grow, and it began to get worse and worse and worse and worse. Conflict that's unresolved grows. There was a study done with tree squirrels where they put them in a box together and they would fight. And then they would establish dominance, and then they would be happy to get to live together. Then they put the tree squirrels together and put a clear panel between them. And they could not fight. They could only hiss at each other. And because they were not able to resolve the conflict of dominance, they would literally die in a couple of days. Unresolved conflict causes you major stress, major adrenaline. It destroys your blood vessels. It eats up your heart. It can cause you strokes. It causes you to age quickly. Unresolved conflict makes you do bad decisions. It makes you do poorly at work. You do you have less patience at home. Unresolved conflict eats away at everything that you are. Well, David did nothing. Absalom would not let his sister do anything. Amnon got away with rape. at least for now. But Absalom is fuming inside and about to make some very bad decisions. He waits 2 years, plans this elaborate party, invites the king's sons, and while they're there, kills Amnon, and then flees to Geshur. He flees to another city. The king thinks all of his sons are dead, finds out only one of them, Amnon, is dead. He's saddened by Amnon being killed. He's saddened by Absalom leaving. He realizes that he did a poor job as a father. He should have dealt with the conflict. And now his son is gone and one son is dead. The story continues, however, where David wants his son to come back. He wants to resolve this issue with Absalom, but he doesn't. And 2 years goes by, and it takes Joab, the right-hand man of David, to go through a disguised woman to tell this story, an elaborate story, to get David to allow Absalom to come back, which he does. But when he finally does, after a couple of years, he makes him live in a house by himself, and he's not allowed to be in the presence of the king, which is even worse. It's like the two squirrels with the clear panel between them. They're living in the same area, but they can't resolve their conflict. So David even brings him home, but he sticks him in a place and doesn't allow him to see him, and that grows anger with Absalom against his father. Not only does it make him upset, he begins to grow in popularity because Absalom has a daughter. He names his daughter Tamar after his sister. And so he's handsome. He's a strong guy. He has long hair. Everybody loves Absalom. So the conflict is growing into this brokenness in the kingdom because it wasn't resolved. And it got so bad that Absalom set Joab's, the right-hand man of David, Joab's field on fire because Joab refused to get him an audience with the king. So he makes a bad decision. Unresolved conflict messes with our brain, makes us think poorly, and causes us to make very bad decisions. So the decision Absalom made was, well, fine, I'm going to set Joab's field on fire. Joab comes to him and says, what are you doing, man? He goes, hey, I'm trying to get you to give me an audience with the king, and you won't do it. So I set your field on fire. Deal with it. And so Absalom, again, they waited too long, finally says, fine, we'll get you an audience with the king. And Absalom is trying to make it right. He says at the end of the 14, he says, it would be better for me to be still in Geshur. Now therefore let me go into the presence of the king. If there is guilt in me, let him put me to death. So he's like ready to be killed. He just can't live with this any longer. And just like the tree squirrels who weren't able to resolve conflict, every time you see someone and you not resolve that conflict, your heart rate goes up, blood pressure increases, tension, stress on your body, adrenaline is released throughout your body, and it's like shredding the insides of you. It's also tweaking your thought process because emotions can be incredibly deceiving. So Absalom is now ready to he'd rather die than live in close proximity to his father and have unresolved conflict. And it ends in verse 33, it says, and Joab went to the king and told him, and he summoned Absalom. So he came to the king and bowed himself on his face to the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom. Now, he embraced him, he kissed him, but the conflict was still never resolved. It wasn't spoken of. There needs to be a conversation about what happened. It needs to be brought up so it can be taken out. And here's the danger of unresolved conflict. It doesn't go away ever. It stays with you. It adds stress to you and to the other person. And then the conflict grows because our emotions, our thoughts, our brain, it makes it bigger and worse and more ugly all the time. Resolve conflict quickly. Amnon When he first was infatuated with his sister, his half-sister, should have went to the king, said, I'm in love with my sister because she's my half-sister and she's not biologically related. May I marry her? Boom, happy ending, problem solved. That wasn't resolved, so he made a bad decision with the conflict and raped her. She tried to make it right. She told the world, I was violated. Absalom prevented her from making the right decision and resolving the conflict. And so, because of that, Absalom planned a 2-year revenge to kill Amnon. Tamar went to her grave unmarried and in shame. King David heard about it. Boom, could have resolved it immediately. Let it slide. Got angry, but did nothing. So you see how this worked from one infatuation to a murder, to a runaway son, to a field being burned, to great deception, and a fractured kingdom beginning to unfold in front of David. And that all started because David didn't go out with the men to war and committed adultery with one of his warriors' wives, hid it, murdered him, lied. See, so his unresolved conflict with that situation began to lead to this unresolved conflict and this great infidelity that's going to happen in his kingdom. So what do we take away today? How do we take this story that is so sad about Tamar, Absalom, Amnon? Resolve conflict quickly. If you're afraid, write that person actually a handwritten letter, not an email, a handwritten letter. Thinking about you. I'm sad that our situation's unresolved. Would love to talk more about it. You know, an email can be deleted, emails, whatever, but a handwritten card to someone or a direct phone call, not a text, not an email, a phone call or a letter goes a long way in resolving conflict. Otherwise, you're adding stress to your life, too much adrenaline, and you're going to begin to feel the weight of that anxiety, and you're not going to make good decisions, and it's going to steal your peace for a very long time. Well, hope to help you today. If it did, hit the like button right there. Right now, take time. Like. Thank you. Subscribe. Send this to a friend. Let's continue to grow our online audience. God bless you and have a wonderful day. And see you tomorrow morning at, that's right, 7:47. See you then.